Welcome back to Operation Evil. This is episode 146, Black Widow in Texas. I'm your host, Nyoka. But before we jump into the case, I want to take a moment to say thank you, Sarah, for joining the Patreon. Welcome. And thank you to the rest of you who keep coming back to listen to these episodes. And another thank you to any new listeners that we may have on this episode joining us. Thank you so much. Warning, this episode contains disturbing content, and as always, listener discretion is advised. In 2023, 48-year-old Sarah Jean Hartsfield of Chambers County, Texas, is being held on a $5 million bond after the death of her fifth husband, 46-year-old Joseph Hartsfield. In 2018, Sarah, whose last name at the time was Donahue, shot and killed her then-boyfriend, David Bragg, after he just discharged a handgun at her during a domestic violence incident. At the time, she was not charged in the death of her then-boyfriend. An investigation by the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehensive and the Douglas County Sheriff's Office analyzed the bullet hole at the scene and found it to be consistent with David discharging his firearm at Sarah as she was ascending the stairs. The report containing this information said she was justified in shooting him and determined that she was acting in just self-defense. However, after her fifth husband's death, Douglas County Attorney Chad Larson said that the investigation is now considered active again. But let's go back to 2023. On January 7th, 2023, according to a report from ABC 13 Eyewitness News in Houston, Sarah made a 911 call due to a medical issue with her husband. The report said Joseph had diabetes, adding that his insulin levels were extremely high in the 4 to 6 hours that preceded the 911 call. Also, his glucose monitor sounded an alarm for quite some time before action was taken. Chambers County Sheriff Brian Hawthorne said in the report, quote, "The story that the wife gave the hospital, the deputies, the detectives, does not match up to the forensic evidence," end quote. Poor Joseph was in a coma for a week before he died. His death is believed to be a result of an insulin overdose. Authorities found several insulin pens on the side of Joseph Hartsfield's bed, but the detective who investigated the case testified that they weren't seized, a fact that investigators said she regretted. On the morning of January 7th, hours before Joseph was hospitalized, messages were sent from his phone to hers, showing his driver's license, a wedding photo, details for a bank account he recently opened, and a key for his Apple Legacy contact, which allowed her access to his phone data after his death. Detective Rocks said that, in his opinion, that she created the Legacy contact info and sent it to her phone. Data from Sarah's phone was at odds with a statement she gave police, although Sarah said that in the hours before Joseph was hospitalized, she'd been asleep and on a narcotic pain medication for recent surgery. The data showed she was on her phone almost every hour. Her internet search history had been deleted, but she made a series of phone calls and sent text messages during that time, including some that she deleted. Among the messages that were gone, Vargas said, was a video she shared with her daughter that Vargas said showed Joseph gasping. That message was sent an hour and a half before she dialed 911. So allegedly, in 2021, Sarah put out a hit on the wife of one of her ex-husbands. Yeah, we're going to learn a little bit about Sarah right now. According to a report from KPRC2 in Houston, documents show that Sarah allegedly told one of her ex-husbands that he wasn't allowed to come home unless he killed the wife of another ex-husband. During the time of this, Sarah's last name was George, and she was put and she put a hit out on ex-husband Christopher Donahue's wife. Her husband at the time was David George, and documents read that there was concern she'd find a different hitman if David didn't do it. But why does she want Christopher's wife dead? A filing for a protective order read that if his wife was dead, Christopher would be too busy dealing with his wife's death to focus on fighting for their children anymore. An affidavit read that David George told Christopher Donahue that he had a gun given to him to commit the murder, but that he had been trying for months to get Sarah to stop pressuring him, and that he would lie to her about why it hadn't happened yet. However, David denied the plot in another filing and said it was a plan to remove 2 of the children from their mother. A week after Sarah spoke with investigators, she filed for divorce from George. Sarah lost custody of her 2 younger children after the alleged hit was revealed. The judge in the case wrote that family violence occurred and was likely to happen again, and also ordered no contact between Sarah and her 2 younger children and Christopher's new wife. Let's keep learning about Sarah's past, shall we? KPRC2 reported that Sarah has lived in at least 39 different places in her adult life, and she had been married 5 times. Sheriff Brian Hawthorne was quoted saying, "When we started talking to other husbands and then finding out some of them maybe aren't alive anymore and other issues, everything just started pointing to foul play. Every relationship that it appears that she's ever been in, everybody wants out of it because they fear for their life. A number of them have either made the statement, 'I needed out because I felt like my life was in danger,' and some have found where their life was clearly in danger," end quote. A Bragg family representative, that was the boyfriend she shot in 2018 that they originally believed was self-defense, shared a statement with KPRC2 that read, "The news of Joseph Hartsfield's death, quote, did not come as much of a surprise to our family," end quote. Quote, "Almost 5 years ago, our family lost a son, a brother, an uncle, and a father. With very little information regarding his death, we were unable to ever really move forward. All we knew is that the man that was described by his killer was in fact not the David we all knew and loved. His death was very random, and the circumstances that surrounded his death seemed far-fetched, almost made up," end quote. Also, just to add to some more of the craziness, there were 3 separate house fires connected to Sarah's former partners and her brother. Now let's talk about Sarah's husbands. After Sarah was charged with first-degree murder, investigators were seeking information about her previous names. And here was the information that I found. Husband number 1, Titus, Noner's child. Titus met Sarah when he was a junior at a small-town high school in Missouri in 1991. They were married 2 years later, and their divorce was finalized in January 1996, he said. While they were separating, Titus said she appeared to threaten him. He said, quote, "I'm very surprised I got out of the marriage alive." Now, his wife, Angela, said Sarah remained an unwanted presence in their lives in the decades after her husband's divorce. Quote, "She was like a bad penny. Every time you turn around, she'd be there. She doesn't do it to confront you. She does it to remind you she's there," end quote. Husband number 2, Michael Traxler. Sarah next married Michael Traxler. In a brief interview, Michael said their relationship was super short and in the rear view mirror. "I haven't spoken to her in 15 years, he said. Husband number 3, Christopher Donahue. Sarah's son, Ryan Donahue, said his father met Sarah in Alaska and married her in 1999. They had 4 children and spent much of their time at Fort Hood, Texas, where they were stationed in the Army. They remained married until 2017 when Christopher Donahue filed for divorce. Fiancé, David Bragg. Hartsfield and 3 of her children moved to Minnesota that year with a new partner, David. They were briefly engaged. On May 9th, 2018, Sarah fatally shot Bragg in their home northwest of Minneapolis. Douglas County Attorney Chad Larson cleared her in the shooting, saying that she had no reasonable possibility of retreating from Bragg and that she had fired at her. After Hartsfield was indicted this year, Larson said the case was active again. As of Friday, his office was still investigating. Husband number 4, David George. Roughly 1 year after her fiancé's death, Sarah married David George, who worked for a gas company in Minnesota, her son said. They lived together in the home where she fatally shot him, and her ex-husband Christopher Donahue also remarried, and in 2021, he made an alarming claim in court. His ex was plotting to have her new husband kill his new wife, according to an affidavit in support of a request for a restraining order. The affidavit describes a plot to derail Christopher Donahue's efforts to get custody of the couple's 2 youngest children. A judge granted the order on June 7th, 2021, and barred Hartsfield from contacting her ex-husband or his family of 2 years. By the time the order was issued, Sarah had already filed for divorce from George, her 4th husband, according to records. Husband number 5, Joseph Hartsfield. Hartsfield met her 5th husband, Joseph, online, and they were married on February 2nd, 2022. By December, the relationship was in trouble. Facebook direct messages obtained by NBC News show her calling him a nightmare and telling a friend she had a plan to get out of the relationship. And we all know how that ends. Let's talk about the trial. After the first week of her trial, a news station recapped what was learned. Here is an audio clip of the news reporting it.
Law enforcement admits mistakes may have been made in the Sarah Hartsfield insulin murder investigation. Today was full of explosive information about her alleged crimes decades before she got charged with killing her 5th husband.
KPRC2 News reporter Bryce Newberry has been in the courtroom all week long. He shares this recap tonight from Chambers County.
For the first time, we're getting a look at the body camera footage from when Sarah Hartsfield let law enforcement inside the couple's home. She left the hospital where her husband lay dying from an insulin overdose, and the sergeant testified he found her demeanor odd, that it was just like another day. The video showed clutter inside their home, and Sarah talked to deputies in a low, calm voice. At one point, she laughed and told them she had to take interior cameras offline about a week before this January 2023 day, just to install a new one. Investigators found prescription pill bottles and insulin pens scattered around the bedroom, but the sergeant took full responsibility for what he called an error. They didn't collect those insulin pens or a glass of juice. Sarah said she kept filling up for Joe in response to his low glucose level. Prosecutors say his sugar was dangerously low for hours before Sarah called 911. Days before Joe ended up in the hospital, Sarah's realtor testified. She texted him about selling their house in Beach City, saying she was, quote, making plans that don't include Joe. Exit strategy planning. He literally buried me in debt. We also heard testimony about earlier criminal accusations that Sarah Hartsfield's defense team fought to keep out of the trial. An FBI agent took the stand about a murder-for-hire plot he said Sarah directed to try and kill an ex's new wife. Jurors heard about 3 separate house fires that 2 of her exes and her brother survived. And the mother of a different ex, David Bragg, talked about losing her son after Sarah shot and killed him in Minnesota in 2018. Doris Swartz said at the funeral home, Sarah put her hand on David's body and asked, "Why did you make me do that?" And shortly after, moved on to a new man. Initially ruled self-defense, the investigator from Minnesota testified that shooting is under investigation again, and they're waiting on the outcome of this Texas murder case before moving forward. Sarah's defense reminded jurors she's never been arrested for any of these things from the past, but the state said it could still be days before they're ready to rest, and testimony is set to start up once again here in Chambers County on Monday morning.
All of Sarah's children testified against their mother. Here is an audio clip from a news station speaking on it.
New at 6, all 4 of Sarah Hartsfield's children take the stand to start the second week of her murder trial. The children testified about when she killed her fiancé and an alleged plot to murder their stepmom, all before she's accused of killing her 5th husband, Joe, in 2023. KPRC2 News' Bryce Newberry is live in Chambers County tonight. And Bryce, a big day of testimony there.
Yeah, Lisa, good evening. All 4 of the children appeared to avoid eye contact with their mother when they walked into the courtroom to testify against her this afternoon. The defense team did not ask them any questions, and only 2 of her children said that they knew Joseph Hartsfield, when that's the husband that she is accused of killing with insulin. Sarah's oldest daughter, Ashley, took the stand first this afternoon, and she talked about messages that she received from her mom during the time that Sarah Hartsfield claimed to be asleep and on narcotics while her husband's glucose level dropped dangerously low. We also heard a voicemail that Sarah left her daughter, instructing her not to give any statement to Chambers County amid the ongoing law enforcement investigation. Sarah's daughter, Hannah, testified about the Minnesota shooting of Sarah's ex. She told cops that Sarah went in with one gun but came running to the car to get another gun, then went inside and ended up killing David Bragg. She said her mom wanted her to change her story to police and tell them she only went inside that house for clothes. Hannah also talked about a murder plot which she learned about from one of Sarah's other ex-husbands, which targeted her dad's new wife. She said her mom, Sarah, would not let that ex back in the house until he took care of what Sarah wanted done. The kids saying sometimes their mother would not let them talk to each other or their father. Now, prosecutors began this trial with an opening statement that Sarah Hartsfield cannot help but explain what she did. Today, we did see more and more messages that started to be introduced. You can read more about what Sarah Hartsfield wrote with the blog that we've updated from today's testimony at click2houston.com.
And Bryce, before you go tonight, we understand some of those messages that came up late today include messages she actually sent you, right?
Yeah, Lisa, prosecutors are hoping to bring up messages that she sent to me and at least 4 other media outlets during her time in jail using one of the kiosks on a jail messaging app. We have one of the messages that she sent me. She said, "As if losing my husband has not been tragic enough. I'm a disabled combat veteran of 20 years in the Army. I'm not a monster or anything else the media has portrayed me as." So the defense objected to all of her messages being admitted during this trial. Attorneys are still inside working to come to an agreement about what the jury will get to see. We should find out tomorrow morning, and I expect that messages will continue to be a very big part of this trial.
On top of the 3 children testifying, which I will tell you what they said, a few more people took the stand that I think would interest you guys. So 3:16 p.m., Emma dismissed from the stand. The state calls its 31st witness to the stand, Ryan Donahue, which is Sarah's son. Ryan also appeared to avoid eye contact with his mother as he testified. He said he wasn't sure how to feel about being there. Ryan met Joseph twice, but said he didn't really know him and only spoke with him for like 10 minutes. He said his understanding of their relationship came mostly from what Sarah had told him. Ryan recalled Sarah staying with him for about a month after surgery and overhearing an argument between the two over a puppy being left in the kennel. He said that his mother told him the two had financial problems and that Joseph would buy things that were bad for his diabetes when there was money in the account. Ryan described Joseph as quiet and said he saw text messages between them where Joseph and his mother they would talk about, Joseph would say call Sarah beautiful and send like loving messages. But Sarah told him that those messages were only because their relationship was rocky. And Ryan said his mother seemed happy at times, but knew that they had argued over Christmas. Ryan testified that Sarah sent him letters and called from jail, but he never wrote back. During one of those calls, Sarah told him he didn't have to comply with the subpoena to testify. 3:09 p.m., Hannah dismissed from the stand. State calls its 30th witness to the stand, Emma Donahue, Sarah's daughter, so I'm going backwards. I apologize. Emma was 19, and she also avoided eye contact with her mother as she testified. She said she hadn't seen Sarah since April 2021 and was nervous to take the stand. Emma said she didn't really know Joseph either, but was aware of the alleged murder plot involving David George. She recalled hearing her mother tell George he couldn't come home unless he took care of it. The last time she saw George, he looked nervous and said he was just there to get his things. Emma said that she didn't tell anyone because she was scared of her mom, and she also remembered being present when Sarah's ex-fiance David Bragg died and once saw him hit Sarah with a shoe, though she wasn't sure if it was intentional or just for play. Emma said that her mother seemed nervous after police questioned her about the Minnesota shooting and admitted that she's afraid of her mom. But for her, at 2:48 p.m., Ashley was dismissed. State calls its 29th witness to the stand, Hannah Donahue, which is also Sarah's daughter. Hannah, 21, a nursing student, identified her mother and seemed to also avoid eye contact with her as she testified. She said she hadn't seen her mother since April 2021, and described her relationship as up and down and unstable. Hannah said that she was 15 or 16 when she learned from David George, Sarah's then husband, that her mother wanted him to kill her stepmother, Heather. Quote, "Your mom wants me to kill your dad's wife," end quote, she said George told her. Hannah testified that Sarah told George he couldn't come home unless he took care of what needed to be done. Hannah also talked about what she witnessed the day that David, Sarah's ex-boyfriend, was shot and killed. She said that her mother told her that he attacked her and that they needed to return to the house. And Hannah testified that Sarah brought 2 guns, asking her to help hide one, and told her, quote, "If anything happens, call 911, end quote. Minutes later, Hannah heard a gunshot followed by several more, and when she ran inside, she saw him lying on the floor and Sarah standing at the top of the staircase with what Hannah described as an empty look. Afterward, Hannah said Sarah pulled her aside and told her to tell me exactly what you told them, demanding she change her story to say that she went inside for clothes. Hannah refused, saying that's lying. Hannah also testified that Sarah would give her medications she wasn't prescribed, pills to sleep, muscle relaxers, diet pills, saying her emotions were too crazy. And Hannah said she still fears her mother. 2:20 p.m., Christopher is dismissed. The state calls its 28th witness to the stand, Sarah's daughter, Ashley. Ashley Donahue testified that her relationship with her mother was unstable and up and down. She said she had spoken to Sarah. She has spoken to Sarah since Joseph Hartsfield's death, but they don't have much of a relationship. Ashley described her mother's relationship with Joseph as moving very quickly and said Sarah often complained about their marriage, but also told her that leaving wasn't an option because she was in too much debt. Ashley said she spent Christmas 2022 with Sarah and Joseph just weeks before his death and described the atmosphere as tense. Sarah had recently undergone surgery, but spent all day cooking, and when Joseph didn't react the way she wanted, Ashley said Sarah got angry and took back his gifts and said that she was done with him. Prosecutors showed text messages between Ashley and Sarah on January 7th, The day Joseph was hospitalized, around noon, Sarah texted a video of Joseph snoring, saying, "Joe snoring chased me to the couch." A few hours later, she messaged that Joseph was in critical condition, in a diabetic coma, and later added, "He has a brain injury from lack of oxygen." Jurors also heard voicemails. Sarah allegedly left Ashley after Joseph's death. In one, Sarah told her to decline to comment if contacted by Chambers County investigators, mentioning that she had offered Joe's insulin pens to detectives and insisting she wasn't worried about the investigation. In another, Sarah said things were bound to get worse before they get better. Ashley also read a letter Sarah sent her from jail instructing her to create a GoFundMe account for her attorney and provided a 4-page letter on what to write. Sarah's attorneys declined to cross-examine Ashley. 1:35 p.m., court resumes from lunch. Boots returned to the stand shortly before the 27th witness, Sarah's third ex-husband, Christopher Donahue, called to the stand. Chris, Sarah's third ex-husband, said they were married 17 years and served together in the military. He described Sarah as an intelligence analyst, a truck driver, a trainer, and a pharmacy technician while in the military. He said the relationship was good and bad, adding that he couldn't talk to his family without it causing problems between them. After they split, he said Sarah got engaged to David Bragg, who was later shot and killed by Sarah. Chris said that he was serving in Korea when Bragg died and flew home for his daughter's birthday when he got the call, and Sarah told him she shot Bragg during an argument claiming self-defense. Chris said after Bragg's death, Sarah wanted to rekindle their relationship. Later, he learned she was dating David George, who eventually reached out to him about a plot to kill Chris's new wife, Heather. He said his daughter Ashley told him, quote, "Mom's trying to have Heather killed," end quote. Chris said he contacted his lawyer and the FBI, leading to an investigation and surveillance video showing George coming to his home with flowers. Chris testified that George and Sarah had bought a black Honda Accord and a pistol as part of the plot. Chris said that he also learned information about David Bragg's shooting from one of his daughters, whom he called and told Minnesota detectives, who have now reopened the shooting investigation. He also talked about Sarah's relationship with her brother, Cody Smith, and said she once told him her grandmother's house burned down and said that Sarah told him that she had did it. He finished his testimony saying he didn't know how or where insulin was administered to Joseph. At 9:30 a.m., Nancy excused from the witness stand. State calls the 24th witness to the stand, Angela, which is Sarah's first husband's new wife. So she's the current wife of Sarah's first ex-husband, Titus. And she testified about an incident that happened years ago while Sarah and her first husband were going through a divorce. Angela said that she and her husband were babysitting at a friend's trailer one night watching a movie with a child who was sick. Quote, "It was about 2 or 3 in the morning and she started to smell gasoline." Angela told jurors she went outside and saw a gas can and gasoline splashed all over the trailer. She said there was no fire, but when she looked up, she saw Sarah running up the street. Angela said she had met Sarah before the incident and knew exactly what she looked like. Quote, "It was gasoline on the trailer when I walked out, along with a gas can," she said. Angela and her husband went back inside the house and called the police. She told the jurors that she was scared. Angela said she first told the information about that night to the Chambers County District Attorney's Office in September. After being contacted about the murder trial, she said she spoke with law enforcement around the time of the incident, but said that she didn't remember what was said and what officers did not, and why they didn't investigate Sarah. On redirect, prosecutors asked Angela whether Sarah had any reason to be near the trailer, and she said she did not have any reason to be there. At 9:05 a.m., the 23rd state's witness, Nancy Castina, Joe's aunt, was called to the stand. So Joseph's aunt, Nancy, took the stand, described her nephew as a good kid who was funny and loved to pull pranks. She said the two were close and that she first learned about Sarah when Sarah visited the family for Thanksgiving. Nancy testified that she initially liked Sarah, saying that she seemed really sweet. But that changed when she started noticing tension between the two, and Sarah and Joseph did not appear to be having a good relationship, adding that Sarah would aggravate Joseph and post things on Facebook that downgraded him. Nancy testified that Sarah would often message her about Joseph's health, complaining about his blood sugar being high and how he didn't eat well, and prosecutors showed text messages that Sarah would send Nancy, and messages Nancy said she would never respond to. The last time Nancy spoke to Joseph was on December 28th, 2022, when he called her, sounding frustrated. Quote, "He was aggravated because of him and Sarah," she said. Joseph told her he was going to Huntsville to open a bank account in his own name because his payroll was going into a joint account with Sarah. He was planning to leave her, Nancy said, also adding that Joseph sounded relieved about this decision. And Nancy said she learned on January 7th, 2023, that Joseph was being rushed to the hospital after her sister Helen called her hysterical. When she arrived, Nancy said Sarah gave her 3 different stories about what happened that night. In one version, Sarah told her that Joseph worked, went to a job interview, came home, made a rice casserole, ate a bowl, drank a glass of water before going to bed. Sarah allegedly said his sugar monitor went off throughout the night, but she didn't check on him because he was walking around. Later, when she went to wake him up, he was unresponsive. Nancy told jurors that she was shocked that Sarah made rice casserole for Joseph because it was too high in carbs. Because as you remember, Sarah complained about his diet. Nancy testified that on November 7th, 2022, Sarah texted her saying that she had the sugar tablets for Joseph and that Joseph was fearful of low blood sugar and was very cautious with insulin. On cross-examination, Nancy said Sarah told her that she had made Joseph chicken and rice and that she'd given him water that didn't taste right. She confirmed she stated to Chambers County Sheriff's detectives at Baytown Methodist Hospital on January 7th, but did not mention the casserole or water at that time. Nancy told jurors the first time she shared that detail about the water not tasting right was with the state, explaining I was focused on Joseph and not the details. That was a lot. And they all pretty much said the same thing, if you noticed, even the kids. Now, sentencing. After the trial was said and done, Sarah, now 50 years old, was sentenced to life in prison for first-degree murder in October 2025 after the jury deliberated for roughly 1 hour. In the closing argument from Chambers County Assistant District Attorney Mallory Vargas said Sarah believed she'd get away with her husband's murder, quote, because it's what she's always done. What a wild coincidence that no person can leave her without consequences, end quote. Sarah's attorney, Case Darwin, countered that prosecutors had no evidence that his client administered that fatal dose of insulin and that Joseph was diabetic and most likely caused his own death. According to relatives, Joseph Hartsfield told them in the weeks before he died that his relationship with his wife of 11 months was deteriorating and that he planned on leaving her. He told me he was worried and that she would kill him in his sleep. Joseph Hartfield's sister, Janine, said. Describing a conversation she had with her brother days before he was hospitalized, she said, quote, "I tried so hard to get him not to go back," end quote. And that will do it for today's episode. If you can't get enough of Operation Evil, consider supporting the podcast by joining Patreon or Operation Evil Plus on Buzzsprout. When you join, not only will you have access to exclusive bonus episodes, but you will also get a shout out. Operation Evil currently has over 50 exclusive bonus episodes ready for you to binge on. The links to join can always be found in our show notes. If you can't join our Patreon or Operation Evil Plus on Buzzsprout, consider supporting us for free by rating the show, telling a friend about the podcast, or like and share our Facebook page. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'll be back next time with a new episode. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.